And we are live. My name's Mark,
My name's Mark.
and this is the M&M Show, where we'll discuss our fantasy football review for Week 10 and start getting ready for Week 11. How are we doing today, Mark?
Pretty good. I'd be better if Jalen Hurts stopped vulturing touchdowns from Saquon Barkley, but otherwise, can't complain. You?
Yeah, pretty good. Obviously, we're recording a little late. I just moved into a new place, so that's the reason for our holdup. So, yeah, just getting settled in and finally ready to talk some football. It's been so busy.
Yeah, it was a good week for us. We actually had correct predictions from the week prior, which is a change from our norm. Do you want to start us off with yours?
Yeah, as for me, for my prediction, I wasn't entirely on the money. I said Josh Allen would get 2 rushing touchdowns. He got 1. However, I did say he'd get 50 yards rushing, and that was exactly 50 yards for Josh Allen. So, yeah, starting to improve my Nostradamus skills over here.
Yeah, very specific on that one. I had one. It's a little bit of a technicality, but I'll take it. I said Rachaad White was going to be the highest fantasy scorer for the Bucks last week. In PPR leagues, he would be. In half PPR leagues like our own, he was not. He put up 16 in half PPR. Bucky Irving put up 16.2. But I'll take it. I mean, both of those running backs really paced the Bucks in terms of fantasy points. Had a good week 10.
Yep, certainly. Bucky Irving just continuing to put a lot of competition there again for Rachaad White. So, did you have any predictions that you missed?
Yeah, one big time one. I had Matthew Stafford as a top 2 quarterback. He was playing Miami. The Dolphins have a good pass defense, and it did not go well. He didn't even throw a touchdown. He threw a pick. Not a good game for him in general, and definitely not a good prediction when I thought he was going to be top 2. But you?
Yeah, top 2 was really bold, and yeah, Miami are showing that they're the real deal. They're going to make that playoff push in the tough division, right? So, still a lot of games left for them. I missed my Zay Flowers prediction. I think he only had like 4 catches for 30 yards. So and no touchdowns. So happy to just gloss over that and move on to some winners, some better pastures for us.
Real quick on the Zay Flowers, it kind of felt like Jamar Chase from Week 9, where Lamar Jackson and the Ravens played really, really well last Thursday, and Zay Flowers just wasn't as involved or catching touchdowns. But we'll see if Week 11 is any different.
Yep, I certainly hope so, just for better receiving production. But yeah, who do you have as your winning quarterback for Week 10?
I've got one. I have Joe Burrow. I know you had him as a winner last week when he threw 5 touchdown passes, none to Jamar Chase. And then he follows that up with 200 more yards. He threw 430 and 4 touchdowns, a lot of those to Chase. That game against the Ravens was really fun to watch. And for fantasy managers, if you had Joe Burrow in your lineup, he was putting up a lot of points for you. So yeah, definitely a big winner. I mean, he's thrown 9 touchdowns and 700 yards in 2 games. That's good.
And somehow the Bengals are still losing games. It definitely seemed like, it was just a game that Joe Burrow had to offload touchdowns to Jamar Chase. So, that just comes with being the Chase owner. You're going to have some of those mediocre weeks where, he's not going to give you the results you want. And then, we see this season after season that he just has these explosive weeks, 40-point fantasy days, 38 points, whatever, 55 in this case. So, that's kind of what you live with. And it just justifies that Jamar Chase will be a first round, if not maybe a top 5 pick next year.
Yeah, and I'd expect that of him, right? We have a couple receivers this year like CeeDee Lamb or Tyreek Hill that we really rated high going into the season. I'm curious if they'll drop a little bit, but Jamar Chase definitely climbing going into next year.
Yep. My winning QB, I'm going to give it to Jalen Hurts because I had him on my team and I traded him away, and now it's really hurting me. I don't think anyone's ever used that pun before, but like you said earlier, he's vulturing touchdowns from Saquon Barkley with the infamous tush push. So he had 2 of those rushing touchdowns in week 10, and just another great game for a top quarterback for fantasy football.
Yeah, the tush push isn't fun to watch as a fan, but if it works, it works. You can't complain about something that's legal and effective. You can complain if you are a Saquon Barkley owner, if you want him to pass to Goddard, not Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Yeah, all these guys who are losing out on potential red zone looks because Jalen Hurts wants his 2-yard rushing touchdown. But if you're a Jalen Hurts fan or Jalen Hurts owner, this is great news for you.
I have a crazy Philly fan, and he can't stand Jalen Hurts. He can't stand watching the guy, but I mean, he's just being effective, and the Eagles are winning games. So I don't know how you can, complain a lot. I get it. He's probably not the best thrower, but it's the National Football League. You got to win in the end of the day, and just another guy I regret trading, especially because the trade just does not work in my favor now. Losing Mason, losing Fields, I'm only stuck with Brown, and I traded away Hurts and Amon-Ra. So just a terrible look on me right now.
Yeah, in hindsight, that's a rough trade.
Yep. All right, let's continue talking about a little more losing. So who do you have as your losing quarterbacks?
I've got 2 here. In part, they're on here because of bad performances and also just looking forward. Sam Darnold is one of them. I know at the start of the season, we were talking about him as a potential real-life MVP candidate. That conversation has died entirely over the past few weeks. He didn't throw a touchdown. He threw 3 picks against the Jacksonville Jaguars, of all teams. That's 6 turnovers in 2 games. It's not good if you are starting him as a quarterback or in Superflex leagues. Another guy who disappointed last week was Joe Flacco. He had, I think, 4 turnovers total, a lot of bad picks to start the game, and now he's benched, supposedly for the rest of the season with Anthony Richardson back in the starting lineup. So sucks if you were relying on Joe Flacco just as a plug and play, and also potentially for the Colts receivers. It could have some long-term effect to close out the season.
Yeah, I do think Flacco should be able to bounce back, but maybe he's just reverting to some sort of mean. He's been able to play a lot over the course of the last year, so teams are probably just trying to tackle some of those things that make him a little uncomfortable, if anything. But yeah, I think this week, week 10 was just not a good week for a lot of quarterbacks. There's honestly a whole list you can build. We could talk Stroud, Kirk Cousins. You alluded to Stafford and Darnold. We got Tua, Baker Mayfield, Jaden Daniels of all people. So, and just allude a little bit to Jaden Daniels. He had a tough game against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was never going to be easy. So I think I kind of alluded to that in the last episode, and that would have been a better prediction to make aside from Jay Flowers. But I just didn't want to doubt Daniels again. But it's just a learning process, right? So, and it's the Pittsburgh defense. They're not going to give you anything easy ever.
Nope.
Yeah. So, but my ultimate losers are Jared Goff, who threw for 5 interceptions on Sunday night, and then Aaron Rodgers, who only had 4 fantasy points against the Cardinals. So I'm sure some people started Rodgers, and it's like you just hate you probably don't have the confidence to ever start him again after just throwing 4 points for you, especially indoors against a mediocre-ish team, but it maybe seems like they're starting to pick up things now. The Arizona Cardinals.
I think one thing with Aaron Rodgers, and we talk about it at length with him, but it's the same as with Joe Flacco. These guys are old for the NFL. There aren't 25, 30-year-old veterans. These guys have been around the league for a long, long time, and it starts to wear on them. Like, no one ever expected Joe Flacco to run for 50 yards a game, but it starts to impact their mobility in the pocket. It starts to impact their footwork potentially and how they're throwing or how deep they're throwing. So obviously more so with Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco, but neither of these quarterbacks are the guys they were in 2012.
Yep. Yeah, no, not even close. Did you have any wild card picks for Week 10?
Yeah, I've got one. A real surprise for me because he's consistently been a loser. That's been Will Levis with the Titans. He put up 19 points, which is especially good after this past week, like you said, with quarterback troubles. But he put it up against the Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers defense, and that makes it more impressive, right? Because they are a good defense. This isn't the Carolina Panthers. So to see him put up 19 points, starting to connect with Calvin Ridley ever since D-Hop got traded. Kind of out of nowhere. Really good game for him.
Yep. Good to see from Will Levis too. So hopefully the second half of the season resurgence is a real thing for him. Because he could throw out a sweet ball. So hopefully Tennessee can just try to make some sort of a playoff push and keep things interesting for us on the fantasy realm. I talked a little bit about the Cardinals when speaking of Aaron Rodgers, but my out of nowhere pick is Kyler Murray. Again, Jets defense, they're pretty good defense, kind of hard to beat, but they could not get the best of Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray really just kind of crushed them with 2 rushing touchdowns. So amazing fantasy production with that alone when a quarterback gets 2 rushing touchdowns, similar to Hurts. But, he really exploded this last week. So, maybe the Cardinals are turning it around too, and they'll be a team we just have to take a little more seriously.
Yeah, the Cardinals are kind of a wild card team in general, but they've been picking it up on both sides of the ball recently. So good to see from them.
Are you ready to talk some running backs now?
Yeah, always happy to.
All right, yeah, start us off. Who are your winners?
It's funny that you mentioned Kyler Murray and 2 rushing touchdowns because both of the guys on here are on here in part for putting up 2 rushing touchdowns. One's Austin Eckler. He had a really big game with Brian Robinson Jr. out again. Only 44 yards rushing, which is not something you want to see from a running back, but he had a season high 13 carries, and he converted 13 of those into 2 rushing touchdowns. So really efficient game for him. I don't know if that's sustainable once Brian Robinson Jr. comes back or if the Commanders' offense struggles, but really big week for Eckler. The other one is Bijan Robinson. He was the number 1 scoring running back for Week 10. And the Cowboys are struggling right now with Dak out and just their defense in shambles, it feels like, too. But he put up over 100 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns as well. It seems like he's really starting to pick up and pay back dividends for folks who drafted him in the first round.
Yeah, it's about time for Bijan. Early in the season, just a huge trade target for us. I don't think we managed to trade for him, but now it's just next to impossible to try to land him on your team. And we're almost not surprised too. Like, this is just what we expect. So keep delivering, Bijan, and maybe we'll get you next year on one of our teams.
I think just a quick caveat. What's really impressive with Bijan is that he puts up these numbers with Tyler Algier still siphoning away snaps and rushing attempts. So it's like, imagine if he had 28 carries a game like Kareem Hunt is doing, he'd be in a different league entirely.
Yeah,
but
probably could have had 200 total yards then, if that's the case. Yeah, I'll cover my winners. So I have Chase Brown as my first winner. So back-to-back strong performances from him with touchdowns to go in hand. However, the next match will be pretty tough. I think. Who are they playing? Yeah, can't remember who they're playing, but I believe it's the Chargers. So if it is the Chargers, it's going to be a little tough for Chase Brown. However, I still expect him to be able to at least land a touchdown and hopefully two. My next winner is Christian McCaffrey. So, I talked a lot about Jordan Mason over the last episodes, and the big man's back, and it's real. He produced for the fantasy owners if you kept him all this time. He's probably going to help your team out a lot now. So a lot to expect from McCaffrey in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a winner. I think tying this back a couple of weeks, the fact that Brandon Ayuk went down and is out for the season also goes in favor of CMC, because you'd expect the 49ers to run more or to turn to him more in the passing game than you would otherwise if you have an established wide receiver one.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see. I took a look at the 49ers matchups too, and it might be a tough end of season for some of these players. I think for the receiving core, so maybe they'll just benefit McCaffrey alone and just getting more looks. And maybe I'll pray for some Jordan Mason touches as well.
Yeah, speaking of Jordan Mason, I can kick us off with our running back losers, because he's right up there. And it's no fault of his own, but I mean, one rushing attempt for 5 yards. If you want to spin it, you can say, oh, it's 5 yards per carry. Great. But if you have one carry, you're not starting this guy. I think you still have to keep him just as insurance, just in case. Obviously, higher upside than some other cuffs like Braylon Allen or Blake Corum. But yeah, it's a bad week for Jordan Mason fantasy owners, at least.
Yep.
The only other guy I have on here is Saquon Barkley, and I only have him on here because of Jalen Hurts taking away those touchdown opportunities. I mean, 14 rushing attempts for 66 yards isn't great, especially for someone like Barkley, but you can live with that. You can't live with him losing touchdown opportunity after touchdown opportunity to his quarterback.
Yeah, he's lost a lot of these, just 1 yard goes to try to put in a score. And yeah, it's just interesting that, a similar situation with Derrick Henry, where it's actually the opposite is taking place. He's getting those short down looks. But you would have thought, Lamar would be trying to go more for those rushing touchdowns. So, yeah, go for it.
One thing I'm curious about is if Barkley will only get touchdowns from like outside of the 10-yard line. Like 2 days ago on Thursday Night Football against the Commanders, he had 2 rushing touchdowns, I think, of over 20 yards and put up 30-plus points. Great game for him. We'll talk more about that next week. But is that the only way he's going to get rushing touchdowns?
Probably so. You love to see it still, but yeah. We'll definitely get more into it next week, but there was that other sequence where it looked like he was going to score and he just went down on the 1 yard line, and the Eagles had no hesitations about what they were going to do. So don't get your hopes up anymore. And it's hard not to. But my loser is Devon Achane, just because he cost me more than a few losses this past week, and there are probably matchups I needed to win by like, maybe 12 points or so, and I just couldn't get the 20 points that I was sitting with comfortably in the past weeks with A-Chain. So the dip was coming, and it hurt me, but I expect them to have a field day against the Raiders this weekend.
You and me both. Anyone playing Oakland should put up pretty good numbers.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be fun to see like a 70-point game from Miami, since they did that to my Broncos last week. I kind of want them to do, or last year, I kind of want them to do that to the Raiders, but that's asking for a lot, isn't it? Yeah. So, all right, who do you have as your wild card running back pick?
We both only have one. I have Chuba Hubbard. Maybe this shouldn't be a wild card at this point. He's the established running back for the Carolina Panthers. They're going to try to take the ball out of Bryce Young's hand. But 28 carries, 150 yards, and a touchdown, those are really good numbers. If I was higher on him, I would just put him as a running back winner for week 10, but I'm not. That's why it's a wild card. I'm curious if Jonathan Brooks is going to cut into that at all, but until that happens, it's tough not to have some level of confidence in starting Hubbard as a flex or RB2.
Yeah, I think by this point of the season, I would have liked to have seen a little more Jonathan Brooks. I think a lot of people would have. But I think he's probably just going to be a better play for next year at this point, just because Chuba Hubbard's getting the work. There's no need for you to play your rookie running back and start getting him, giving him the load in the middle of the season where it's like a lost season, right? Better to just keep him fresh, and he's coming off ACL injury, right?
Yeah.
So better to just keep him fresh for next year, I would think. But we'll see. This league does some funny things sometimes. So, rooting for another Longhorn in Jonathan Brooks to take a few more snaps on the field. I have Tyrone Tracy as my wild card, and it just seems like the takeover is real for him. He's the lead back for the Giants. He's had some up and down weeks, right? In the last 5 weeks, I believe. But after the bye week, New York has a bye week this week for week 11. The matchups are looking pretty favorable for the running backs. So loving Tracy, and yeah, I mean he's a guy that you traded to me, and I dropped him just because I don't know my running backs like that. And another one that hurts as well.
I picked him up immediately after you dropped him. I was like, thank God he's floating there. Nobody claimed him off of waiver wires. I didn't expect him to be this good. I thought it was going to be more of a timeshare situation with Devin Singletary. But yeah, Tyrone Tracy Jr. is having a really good back half of the season.
Yep. I won't forget for next year. I'm already more in like next year mode, and like, but there's still hope. I just it was a tough week for me. That's all.
Do you want to think positive? Talk about your favorite section.
Yeah, most certainly. Yeah, let's talk some receivers. I mean, obviously we have Ja'Marr Chase as our undisputed winner. We went into it a little bit earlier. Speaking about Joe Burrow, finally throwing him touchdowns to him. Yeah, those 260-yard game is just absurd. So yeah, let's see if he can maybe even get close to that. Probably not, but we can't doubt Ja'Marr Chase. My other winner is Calvin Ridley, just because it was a bit of a underwhelming week for receivers, kind of like quarterbacks as well, kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, Calvin Ridley. So alluding to your Will Levis pick, he's had 5 receptions and at least 70 yards in the last 3 weeks, and also the matchups for receivers in the Tennessee Titans are looking pretty good to end of the season. So good win for Calvin Ridley, and I finally have confidence restored in what he's capable of.
Really quickly, I'm going to list off a couple quarterbacks. I want you to tell me what you think they have in common. All right. Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with Hurts and Daniels, you have the running upside that they provide, and yeah, Goff and Darnold definitely just more pocket passing type of quarterbacks.
So those 4 quarterbacks that are getting started in pretty much every league threw for less yards than Jamar Chase caught in Week 10. Jamar Chase caught more yards than all but 10 quarterbacks passed for in Week 10. Just ridiculous numbers. I didn't even put anyone else in the receiver winner section. It was just Jamar Chase. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
That's the tweet.
Absolutely. And just because we both had Jamar Chase, I had to, I love my receivers, so I have to throw someone else in here. And how about, what better way than to throw somebody I've lost confidence in, but now finally just, the Calvin Ridley we used to know is starting to show. So, yeah, let's do some wild cards. For me, I put down Ricky Pearsall. So he had his first career touchdown last weekend with 4 receptions and 470 yards. So good to see just the rookie emerge and kind of fill in the Ayuk boots for the time being, at least for the season. So I'm excited to see if he's capable of replicating this again. But receiving matchups are looking tough for the Niners to end the season. So probably somebody I just wouldn't look to target. But if he's able to prove me wrong, then more power to Ricky Pearsall.
I would never advocate for gun violence, but the 2 football players I can think of that got shot turned out to play really, really well, with Brian Robinson Jr. last year and now Ricky Pearsall this year. Glad he recovered, glad he's healthy, glad he's safe, and yeah, good for him for getting his first career touchdown last week. My 2 wildcard receivers for Week 10 are Marquez Valdes-Scantling, MVS, with the Saints. He only had 3 targets. He caught all 3 targets from Derek Carr, caught him for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. I feel like that's about as efficient as you can get. The other one is Tylan Wallace. I think he's like receiver 4 or 5 on the Ravens depth chart, but he had a really good breakaway, like catch and run. He also caught 3 passes for 115 yards and a touchdown. Neither of those guys, I think, are going to get anywhere close to 10 fantasy points at any point again this season. But yeah, huge games for both of them.
Yeah, Tylan Wallace. I will have to do some more research because I couldn't tell you where this guy went to college.
You and me both. I have no clue.
Yeah. As for Scantling, that might be his last best game ever, maybe. Yeah. Definitely guys to that kind of just surprised you. They gave you a little shock and they caught your eyes a little bit, but just not something I want to move forward with if I'm trying to make the playoff push.
Yeah, I wouldn't fight on the waiver wires to pick up either of them. But if you happen to roster them or play them in like a DFS league, that's a good call.
Yep, definitely. Who do you have as losing receivers?
I've got CeeDee Lamb, partly because he had a really bad Week 10, partly just outlook for the rest of the season. Dak Prescott is done for this year. So whether it's Cooper Rush or Trey Lance throwing the ball, neither of those is really appealing if you're a CeeDee Lamb owner. But Week 10, he dropped a touchdown with the sun right in his eyes. He had 6 catches for 10 targets for 21 yards total, which is atrocious. In full PPR leagues, you're still getting 8 points out of him. But it's tough if you drafted him, in the top 5 this year to see how he's been playing, and then obviously the next few weeks.
Yeah, so tough because the talent is undeniable. Easily a top 5, top 3 receiver in the league. And yeah, losing Dak is it's a huge loss. It hasn't been a good season already for Lamb, and yeah, it just doesn't look really promising to end the season. But it might be a good time to try to buy low. I just don't know if CeeDee Lamb owners even want to sell this guy for scraps.
And he's still going to get the target share. It's just it's tougher to have any confidence in him. Like whereas before he's a lock for wide receiver 1, now he's probably a flex play. But speaking of talent, the other losers I have on here are the Jets' main receivers, Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams. Wilson had 5 catches for 41 yards. Davante Adams 6 catches for 31 yards on 13 targets. Again, they're still going to get volume. They might get touchdowns next week, but a rough week 10 outing for them.
Yeah, I do think the Jets will bounce back in general. They're playing at home, and they just seem to be a much better home team for whatever reason. They go away, and Rodgers forgets to, take whatever he needs to take to be in his right mind. And, it's just not good whenever the Jets are away. So, rather underwhelming week for receivers. Of course, it goes hand in hand with the quarterbacks that we alluded to. Just some of the losers for me are some big names. So Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, to name 3. Neighbors has shown, he's a tremendous talent, and he didn't have the worst of weeks, but he's probably missing a touchdown to just really make it a solid week. Same with Hill and Jefferson too. They just couldn't find the end zone. So I'm just going to stick them in the losers because, if I were betting, at least one of these guys would have scored last week, and they didn't. Great. Let's talk some more pass catchers then. Who you have as your winning tight end?
I actually have someone who also did not catch a touchdown, but he's still coming back from injury. TJ Hawkinson for the Vikings. He had 8 catches on 9 targets for 72 yards, which is good for tight ends this year, and it's good to see his target share and volume picking up. So I still expect Justin Jefferson to get a lot of the looks from Sam Darnold, but he had a good week 10, and TJ Hawkinson is definitely moving up the tight end ladder for me.
Yeah, Hawkinson he's with the Vikings, right?
Yeah. Now he is. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. That'll be interesting to see how, moving forward, just what comes off that. Is the Vikings offense going to be better? I'd imagine so, right? Good for Hawkinson. Good to see him back on. My winner is Travis Kelce once again. It seems like he's just munching on these mid-season matchups that he has. Just super consistent the last 3 weeks, and reluctantly I have him here because the Broncos just gave him a really easy touchdown. It was like a 3-yard pass, and just no one was marking him. Easy route. And we lost the game that we maybe should have won off a block kick. So a lot of pain this week.
Yeah, with Travis Kelce, I think part of it is that Patrick Mahomes trusts him, which is something as a Xavier Worthy fantasy owner. I know that Mahomes does not trust Xavier Worthy. So if Kelce gets those looks, he's going to put up good numbers. Maybe not, 100, 150 yards every week or a touchdown, but yeah, he's dependable if nothing else.
Yeah, just really turned it around compared to how he started the year. My losing tight end, I have Sam Laporta on here. Although he had a good game in week 10, he won't be playing in week 11. So something for owners to evaluate and, maybe slot in the backup tight end for Detroit. Couldn't tell you his name off the top of my head, but I'm sure y'all can find it.
Yeah, somewhere on a fantasy league. I've got another injured tight end on here as a loser as well, and Dalton Kincaid. He got injured. I think one of his knees he's having an issue with it, so he's out for week 11. And he also only caught 2 passes for 24 yards in week 10. So look to Dawson Knox or other pass catchers in Buffalo to pick up the slack. Yeah.
2 second-year tight ends on the losers, and these are 2 guys that have that top end tight end talent, and it's just been a tough year for both of them. Who is the wild card that we have listed here?
Yeah, we've got the same one. It's Tanner Hudson with the Bengals, and Joe Burrow's been picking it up recently. Jamar Chase was the biggest benefactor in week 10. But Tanner Hudson also went off. He had 6 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. Fun fact, over the last 9 weeks, so all the way up until week 10, total combined, he had 7 targets, 4 catches, and 32 yards. No touchdowns. I wouldn't have high hopes for Tanner Hudson going forward, but big week 10.
Yeah, it wasn't Mike Gesicki this time. So Tanner Hudson, let's see what you can do. Do you have any trade targets for this week or end of the season?
I don't know about trade target, but if you are a Jonathan Taylor fantasy owner, maybe consider selling him. Jonathan Taylor's kind of underperformed this whole season, and they've had a quarterback carousel back and forth between Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco. But Richardson is back in the starting lineup. I think he's there to stay through the end of the year. And there's a chance he does to Jonathan Taylor what we see Jalen Hurts do to Saquon Barkley, where they might, call up designed run plays for Richardson. He might get some goal line looks. So it's not that Jonathan Taylor is going to be bad for the rest of the year, but I would sell while you can try to get some value out of him.
Yeah, that's fair. I would love to try to take a chance on Jonathan Taylor if anyone wants to sell him to me. My 2 trade targets I spoke about earlier. One's going to be Calvin Ridley, just because end of season matchups looking good, and Tennessee Titans really have to try to make a push for the playoffs. So that's going to mean they're going to throw the ball, and they're not the best of teams, but they might be able to surprise us every now and then. And then Tyrone Tracy would be my other trade target. The Giants have a bye this week, so maybe it's a good opportunity to try to catch him early before they resume plays in week 12.
Yeah, that's a good shout out for the bye week too. I think anytime you're trying to pick up a player, if they are on a bye week, that's something you can call into your trade where you're just offering points for this week and willing to bite it and take the bye week to have Tyrone Tracy Jr. on your team or anyone else for that matter.
Yep, absolutely. Now we can get into one of the best parts here. So our bold predictions. Kick us off. What are we going to see this weekend?
After finally getting one bold prediction right, I'm feeling a lot better about this section. I've got 2 on here. One is Breece Hall going off against the Colts. Like you said, the Jets have been playing better at home, and I think Breece Hall might get more touches. I think he's going to get 140 scrimmage yards. I'm not going to predict rushing and receiving, but I think he's going to get 140 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns. I think it's going to be a big week 11 for him. The other bold prediction, again, I don't have specific point numbers for this, but I think Bo Nix is going to score at least twice as much as Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. The Falcons have been pretty good this season, but they're playing a tough Broncos defense that almost won a game against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And Bo Nix has been picking it up as the year has gone on. So I feel like it's a little bold, but not too spicy.
I hope you're absolutely correct about that Bo Nix prediction. And just because of that, I might just have to start him in one of my lineups. So can't wait. Bo Nix has been so awesome. My bold predictions, I have Chase Brown. It's a tough matchup, right, against the Chargers. He's going to go for 50 yards. However, he's going to get a touchdown and 6 receptions for 40 yards. So the Bengals are still going to throw the ball, and Chase Brown, he's just shown he can do it on the ground, or he can do it off the receiving game. So expect a big week from him. And then Devon Achane will have 100 yards, a touchdown, and 5 receptions for also 40 yards. So 2 running backs for my bold predictions, just to kind of change things up and take up my running back game a couple notches.
I like the Achane Breece Hall mirror. We're both calling 140 scrimmage yards. I do think Breece Hall is going to get more touchdowns, but yeah. Well, welcome to the cult of the running backs.
Not so fast. It's just the circumstances thus far. Alrighty, well, that'll do it for us. Good luck in your Week 11 matchups to our listeners, and we'll be ready next week with some more reviews and analysis.
Yeah, hopefully a better week for passers and pass catchers, but we'll see you to recap Week 11.
Yeah, it's going to be a winner, so take it easy, y'all.